Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called I May Be King of Monsters, but I'm Still More Human Than Your Masters, written by Random 3X. The envoy from the theocracy looked out the carriage window. As it drew up towards Hades' seat, capital of the Shadow Empire, and the place where the current Dark Lord dwelt. Slowly but surely, the carriage turned around a central fountain with artistic reliefs before stopping before a pair of imposing black metallic doors. The door to the carriage opened with a click as a werebeast butler opened it for him. He could tell that it was a creature due to the slitted irises, though what manner of creature it would become was beyond him. It was said of some of the cardinals could tell at a glance, but he was a mere bishop. "We welcome the envoy from the theocracy," the butler said, offering a bow. Looking around, the bishop was disappointed by how few people there were to welcome him. He was a highly ranked member of the theocracy, here on a diplomatic mission. Anything less than a grand welcome would be an insult, though to expect anything from savages was probably too much. "A light welcome, I see," the bishop said hastily. "By order of His Most August Majesty, sir," the butler explained, offering a second bow. "He said not to roll out the welcome party for someone such as yourself." Taken aback by the admission from the creature, the bishop held his tongue. It would be one thing to do such in front of his retinue with other witnesses, but here, with no one but the Dark Lord's men, they could spin the tale any way they wished. "Very well, tell your owner that I'm here." It was the werebeast's turn to be taken aback before recovering his own composure. "I shall not need to, sir. He is already awaiting your arrival with eager anticipation. Please follow me," he explained, gesturing towards the doors that were now opening. Walking into the main chamber, he held back how impressed he was from showing on his face. For a nation of backward races and primitives, the artwork here was enough to deck the halls of the great temple where the Angel Vespasia resided. "Here we have the Hall of 1,000 Mirrors installed during Hades' reign," the butler offered as he turned down a hallway lined with the most ornate and perfectly cleaned mirrors he'd ever seen. He had at most seen a hand mirror of this quality that wasn't just polished metal, but these were truly masterful. "Dwarven make?" he asked, thinking of all the pathetic races this nation allowed to call home. The most industrious could produce them. "I believe they are from the Academy workshops, if I recall correctly, sir." The answer filled the bishop's heart with pride. While the Academy was now a den of beasts and under-races, it had been founded and run by the first hero of humanity, a man whose fall was not well recorded, only that he went off to face the first Dark Lord alone. "We're at the throne room, sir. The Dark Lord Halshop has agreed to meet you alone. I have been asked to advise you to speak as freely as you so wish. Treat him with contempt should you so wish it." Trying his best not to let the confusion show on his face, he stepped through the doors to the throne room. The room was rather austere compared to the rest of the palace he had passed through. The pillars were for function, not form. Even the throne at the end of the room seemed rather plain, a simple wooden chair with a black gemstone in its headboard. Looking around the room, he could not see the man he had been sent to deliver a message to. However, he hoped that he would receive a positive response. After all, he was the first human to ascend to the ebony throne. Granted, he was centuries old at this time, but the theocracy was willing to overlook extending life with magic, so long as it was ultimately served the gods. "Hello," he ventured, still peering around the room, but finding no one. "What you got there?" a playful voice asked as he snatched the sealed letter from his hands before slinking away. "Hey, that's for the Dark Lord's eyes only, fool." A lanky-looking man in a simple, albeit slightly ragged, suit stood before him, eyeing the letter in his hands, as the bishop reached out to grab it, but the man moved away from his reach with a grace that did not match his figure. "What an important-looking seal. Did the angel send this one?" the fool asked as he continued to skip and move out of the bishop's grasp. No, it was the Council of Cardinals. Now return it, or there shall be trouble, the bishop snarled. Trouble? The fool asked, tilting his head. Yes, now get your master, and we shall discuss its contents. Ah, yes. It is for the Dark Lord Hellship, right? The fool asked as he walked over to the ebony throne. The bishop had heard of the throne in many tales, that it only ever allowed one master, that any who so much disgraced it other than the Dark Lord would be turned to dust. Give me a moment, and I shall read it, the fool said as he slumped into the throne and broke the seal. You are Hellship? The fool on the throne went as he looked over the page he was reading. Oh, yes, the one and only, Dark Lord and ruler of the Shadow Realm, blah, blah, blah. I have so many titles I actually have a book of just listing them out, so why don't we stick with my favorite title? One of my young daughters gave me. And that would be? The bishop asked, as with any diplomat, part of his mission was to gather information. The King of Titles. A great title for one with so many, Hellship chuckled before continuing to read the letter. The bishop tried his best to read his face, but contrary to most other rulers he had met, this man wore too many emotions to gather his mood. So the letter is the deal, Hellship asked. Yes, the bishop replied. You are aware of its contents, I assume? Yes. I was involved in the meeting when they penned it, though I have spoken it to no one. Tell me, O bishop. Hellship rolled his hands, to which the bishop promptly responded. Hellbrand, sir. Hellbrand. Interesting name. So tell me, Bishop Hellbrand, how you disliked over there? In that theocracy, I mean. Disliked? Hellbrand echoed, confused. As far as he knew, he was a rising star with growing influence and plenty of friends. No, sir. Then are you a fool? A fool? Hellbrand bit his tongue to hold back a wave of insults that he had for this man who had ignored all etiquette for meeting a diplomat. It's just, the theocracy wants me to legalize slavery in exchange for lasting peace. Hellbrand nodded. The Council of Cardinals agreed that it was such a simple and agreeable offer that only a madman would reject it, especially since their evidence suggested that Hellship was born and raised in the Secondian kingdom, a nation built on slavery. And the alternative is war? Sadly, yes, Hellbrand nodded. It's just, do you know of the foundation stones of the Empire? Hellbrand shook his head. It was something he had never heard, even in whispers. I see, it makes sense then. You see, when the Empire was founded, the Dark Lord Hades gathered the 7 sinful lords to aid him. This I know, Hellbrand replied, nodding along. They each set a rule that could never be broken by any successor. The rules were such that they were flexible enough to shift, but ultimately wouldn't be broken. Now further history. Do you know what gluttony's one rule never to be broken is? No, I do not, Hellbrand replied, shaking his head. Well, you see, this land was founded by misfits, outcasts, and runaways from the other continents. We are people unwanted by all others, so we forged a paradise out of volcanic wasteland. It is a land that values the rights of freedom and autonomy. Gluttony, being an orc from a race often enslaved, set his unmoving rule to be no slaves. That's why slave ships that go through our waters are captured, and the enslaved people are offered a place to live. I was unaware, Hellbrand replied, unsure of himself now. But you grew up in Secondian. Hellbrand's plea was cut off before it could even be finished. I was a peasant in that land. We saw how the slaves were treated, and it disgusted us, but we had little right to do anything to help them. What are the slave mines or the dead slaves? Hellbrand asked, clutching at straws. The ones working the mines are criminals working hard labor. Once their sentences are served, they are free to go. Not to mention, their rights are maintained during their punishment. The dead slaves, as you label them, are protected even more and must receive a fair wage that once their debt is repaid, they are free to do as they wish. During that period, they can even change employers. So I'm left with a quandary here, Hellbrand. Oh, you see, if I let you go home unaccosted for this slight, not only to me but our very founding principles, it'll not look good to my people. However, I killed you in the most terrible manner, it would start a war. Hellbrand could feel a lump forming in his throat around which words refused to form. So I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to be entirely honest with me. Any lie, and I shall accept the war option. Is that understood?" Halbrand nodded vigorously. "So first, I shall ask again. Are you disliked in your homeland? Because it seems to me sending someone to deliver this message would likely end in death." Halbrand shook his head. He honestly did not know who could have set him up. "Okay, you don't know. Understood. Next, are you a fanatic? By which I mean, are you willing to die for your cause?" Halbrand again shook his head desperately. "No." "Good. I loathe nothing more than fanatics. I have to keep telling my Imperial Guard to protect the people before they protect me. But they just won't listen. Okay, last question now. I know you're a full messenger. Who does value life?" Halbrand asked, looking up at Halship, hoping for mercy. "Which hand is your dominant hand? The one you write with, the one you drink with, the one you cannot bear to live without? I believe I have a way to satisfy both parties. Because, Halbrand, I may be the king of monsters, but I'm still more human than your masters. I love the land that accepted a down-and-out orphan from a no-name village. To betray their morals would be to betray myself, and I shall commit no treason on this day." Stepping off the throne, Halship approached Halbrand and knelt before him, bringing him to eye level. Halbrand hadn't even noticed he'd fallen to his knees. "So, right or left?" End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.